Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
That it's time for our Conservative Future segment. Welcome to the program. For the first time, Melissa Koller is on the line, calling from Crawford County. Melissa, welcome to the Paul Harrell program.
Hello, Paul, and Merry Christmas to you and all of your listeners.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Now, Melissa, I want to, first of all, you are a member of the Crawford County Republican Committee, and you also used to be the chair of that committee. Is that right?
That is true.
Okay. So you're the former chair. I just wanted, and so can I ask you how old you are? Is that rude of me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess it is considered.
It is considered rude.
Rude, but that is fine. Most people think I'm younger than I am, but I'm 35 years old. I'll turn 36 on the 19th.
I think that's to me that qualifies as conservative future. So you're, I believe, a young conservative, Melissa. And
well, thank you.
So tell me, how did you identify as a conservative? Has it always been that case? How did you develop conservative worldviews?
Well, Paul, first and foremost, I was raised in a Christian home by my parents, and I think for a lot of people, that's how your conservatism starts, because God set up different areas to govern our lives. He set up our parents, our family. He set up the government. A lot of people forget that God actually set up government, and he set up the church. So if you believe in our Lord Jesus Christ and you read the Bible, you'll realize that the Lord set up the strictures for government, and even in the Bible, he gives guidelines for each of those governing bodies. So that's, I believe, for me, where it starts. But beyond that, when I turned 18, I immediately registered to vote, and I selected Republican, and my first vote was for George Bush. And from there, I was just a voter, right? I think a lot of people in our state, and of course all over the nation, are just a voter. And so I started to notice that I would go to the polls and I was voting, and I really didn't know who I was voting for. And I was clicking Republican names. And so I finally got involved in the committee, and I took time to read the platforms, and I took time to read the GOP, the national platform, and I said, yes, absolutely, this is things that I believe. So that's where conservatism started. But beyond that, I actually, just to prepare for our call, I went out and I looked at the Webster's definition of conservative, and it's holding to traditional attitudes and values and cautious about change or innovation. And then it says, in the English, it's aiming to preserve. And that right there is really, it's the epitome of the word, isn't it? Preserving liberty, preserving freedom, and preserving individual God-given rights, and not letting man take those away from us.
Yeah, and it just dawned on me that maybe possibly that the label conservative. I mean, I know I know I want to preserve liberty and do all those things as well. But if you actually think about conservatism in the context of limited government, it's because we have a limited government that we were able to progress. In terms of, like, let's just take a free market economy. You know what I mean? Giving people the freedom to tinker in their garage and things like that. Actually, in restraining government regulation and everything else, it actually helps us, because I know one of those definitions said something about being skeptical of new things.
Cautious about change.
Yeah, cautious about change. The thing is, with technology and free market and everything else, I mean, the fact is the government that we instituted, back in the 18th century, up until that time, everything was pretty much the same. There hadn't been any big technological advances, and yet, 200 years later, there's a man on the moon. So something happened in that infancy. The systems that we set up, the attitude of our people for the first 100 years was, I don't need a handout, or I don't need government to do X, Y, Z. I've got this, and they understood the benefits of the liberty, I think, better than we do now, for sure.
Absolutely. I was speaking with Heidi Cruz back during her husband's campaign when she came to visit the Arkansas women, Republican women. And we were speaking, and I said, I don't need government to give me a handout. I need them to take things, move them out of the way so that I can have opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're cautious about jumping to the new thing, we can take the time to actually look through the possibilities, make sure that what we're moving forward towards is not going to take away from the good things that we have had already.
Yeah.
When you talk about technology, last night I was reading an article by Infamous from Hillsdale College, and they had scientist Craig Chester that had come and had spoken, and he works at an observatory in the United States here that is completely privately funded, the Institute for Research in Astronomy, Monterey's the Mira Institute. And they were talking about the wise men and following the star and the song we sing, and he went into actually saying, it was actually astronomical events that were happening that made them take notice of the Christ child being born.
Yeah.
And, it brings it back to that our God is a God of miracles and a God of the mystical. And sometimes with the technology and the change and the new, it is easy in this day and age to forget that God gave us rights, that he set our course for us already, and that we diminish those rights when we legislate and grab hold of power just to hold on to it, just to control it, because God's the one that's supposed to be in control.
Yeah, there's a lot of documentaries or studies about, they're trying to find, okay, the Christmas star, this time, this is the general, window where we think Jesus was born, and then, what astronomical, things happened that were conspicuous in that time. And so there was a documentary I watched that was fascinating. I think it was just called The Christmas Star. And it was really, really neat to look at that, to look into that, and we can of course do that now with the technology that we have. We're talking with Melissa Koller. This is our Conservative Future segment. I think you can tell just by speaking with her that she certainly is, a conservative and is going to be around for a long time in this movement. So can I ask you this, Melissa, Arkansas politics, the Republican Party, I mean, do you admit that there's a divide in the Republican Party? And if you do see a divide, because I see one, if you see it, what do you think needs to happen moving forward?
There is a divide. And I'll tell you one interesting thing I've taken note of for probably a little over a year. First time I heard it was in a District 3 meeting when I was chair. I heard it again at our winter meeting, that the party, through our chairman, is inviting Democrat officials to change parties and become Republican. We even had 2 representatives that changed parties here in January after they'd won the election. That's how we got our super majority that everyone became so excited about. And I think that shows an absolute divide right there, because when you look at the platform, now I'll admit the new 2016 platform is not the platform I thought we were voting in. But when you look at both the GOP platform and the platform of the Republican Party of Arkansas, it talks about limited government, at least the GOP platform does, separation of powers, federalism, the rights of the people, that they must be preserved, uncompromised for future generations. Political freedom and economic freedom are indivisible, and that political freedom and economic freedom are separated. When they're separated, they're in peril, but when they're united, they're invincible. And so that that platform is so completely opposite of the Democrat platform. So when we go out and we ask officials that have been elected on that opposite platform to just change your allegiance, can a person do that, Paul? Can they take – because for me, what they're talking about is just not a party platform. It is the true ethics of what I believe, part of how I actually live my day-to-day life, how I walk out and make my decisions, both in my family business, in my personal business, in how I raise my daughter and how I go about my day. Those types of principles, they're the building blocks of who I am. So when you go out and you send out this invitation, hey, well, you want to change parties, because, I mean, obviously the Republicans are winning in Arkansas at this time. Well, did they really change who they are? Because for all these years before, they've been signing that Democrat platform, running as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think it's the whole point of the conservative movement here in Arkansas and across the whole nation, Paul, is that conservatives, the building block people that have grown up, you know, I know there are people different from me out there, and I respect that 100%. But this nation, I don't care what you want to believe, it's in the history books. This nation was founded by people that came here for religious freedom, and those people were Christians. They were looking for religious freedom in their way to worship God as they chose, and they believed as God as in Yahweh. And so that is where our founding principles are. So if you want to just say, hey, I'm going to flip, I'm going to say that I am Republican, that I believe all those things, but that's not how you've lived your whole entire life. Conservatives are saying that there's no way those people can legislate by what we believe, by our platform that we've written all this time. And so that, yeah, it's absolutely a divide. Yeah. And I think it's why more and more of the conservative voice is getting louder and louder and louder. And it's why Donald Trump won. And quite honestly, I'll say it right here on your show to everyone, it's why I will vote for Jan Morgan, and why I believe Jan Morgan should win the governor's race if she'll just enter for us, right, Jan?
yeah, she's got it. She's got to enter. Who knows? Maybe there'll be an announcement, coming the first of the year. She hinted at that at the Craighead County event a couple weeks ago. Melissa, I can't agree with what you said more, and I just want to add the reason. It's disingenuous, like you said. People have deeply held beliefs that inform the way they're voting, and so for Democrats just all of a sudden switch sides, it just means that they're doing it to maintain power. And we have a specific example of that, with State Representative Joe Jett, who switched parties because the state party said, if you're going to be a committee chairman, you're going to need to be the majority, party that controls that chamber. It's got to match up. You got to have Republican. So he switches parties, and then he gets to maintain his chairman of Revenue and Tax in the House. And so it's just about
which leads
power.
to all of our problems right now, doesn't it?
Do what? Say that again.
That leads to all of our problems right now, doesn't it? Because you cannot. I will never believe he's legislating any differently than he was the last time he was elected.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you're saying, okay, I think you've hit on something big here, that part of the divide is, and I haven't spent as much time on this as I should have, the fact that the party is inviting Democrats to switch parties just to build what? I mean, what are they building? You're building something that has no principles. You're building something, it's like we want to be a big tent, but do we really want to be a big tent when you're going to have Democrats who've got no problem taxing businesses out of business, who are going to be masquerading now as a Republican? I mean, it's really sad.
Absolutely, 100%. You can look at the current preamble of the Arkansas Party platform, and it says, "God is the source of our rights." And if that's true, if we're reaffirming that God is the source of our rights, right? Protected by imperfect souls, relying on God-given gifts to serve their neighbors, then we have to be willing to let go of the control because God's in control. And if we are walking his path, if our legislators are actually walking his path for this state, then the power to legislate will stay where it's supposed to. And we don't have to power grab by bringing people over that don't truly believe the way we believe. Point blank.
Yeah. Wow. Very well said. Melissa Koller for our Conservative Future segment. Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. I'd love to have you on again sometime, and we can talk more Arkansas politics. I really appreciate it.
I would enjoy that very much, Paul.
All righty. Well, you have a Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you before then.
Same to you.
All righty. Thank you so much. Melissa Koller, everybody, from Crawford County.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.